Hello everyone, this is part 12 of my Hocus Pocus Sanderson sister videos. This week I'm going to do two videos. This one is for the miniatures and the other one that I posted before is just showing the book. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the little miniature pieces that I've got for this project. First we're going to show you the things that I've actually bought for the house. One is this little mirror here that will hang in one of the bedrooms. And it's, I think, from Michael's craft store. And I got these bottles from the same place, but I cut down the corks a little bit so they're not so big. And I even added these little plants inside to just look like some herbs. And this little bowl, it's got egg yolks, but I'm going to paint those to look like eyeballs. And I'm going to take the toes off of here and put down in there. This is the foot from Amigo doll, and this is an arm from Amigo. And I'm just going to cut off those toes and those fingers and glue them down in here with what's going to be eyeballs, because you know there's the scene where Mary picks up a bowl when she's looking for the dead man's toe, so that's what this will be. And then of course you saw this little bucket in an earlier video. I bought this at one of the craft stores. That's for Sarah's mop. And then of course there's an actual scene where Winifred is carrying or holding a mirror early on in the movie. So that I bought this. When I saw this, I thought it was perfect for that. And it came with this little hairbrush, two different little hairbrushes. So those will lay on a dresser or something in her room. And these are one of the most fun parts. These are actually, I got these to be rugs in the different parts of the house, but what these really are drink coasters. These came from a local craft store, but to me they look just like rugs. I actually have rugs that look like these in my house, and these are actually drink coasters. If you want to maybe find those, you could probably just type in drink coaster. So I thought those looked really cool. And the last thing I've bought so far has been this pie safe. I was really surprised at the price of this. It was just $3.99, and it's actually made out of wood. And I don't even think anybody could make this for $3.99. I mean, by the time you bought the supplies, you'd be paying a lot more than that to make this. Because this is almost identical to something I actually wanted to make for the house, but the one in the movie looks just like this minus the punch tin, so I could take that tin out of the doors. I've already had it out actually, and that pops right out. So I mean, it's so close. Sometime when I get more into fixing this in the house, I'll put a picture of the one from the movie side by side to this, so you can sort of see what I'm talking about how it looks so much like the one in the movie. But I really like the tin, so I may keep the tin in there. I'll just have to see how it looks when I get it put in place. Now this next little lot is stuff that my friends has given me. A couple of my friends gave me this little knitting basket, and I'm going to have a little story later on to go with this knitting basket. One of the sisters will have this sitting in their room. So I've got this, and these two little crocks, which I really like these crocks. I noticed there's a lot of these sitting around actually in the Sanderson house. So I think these will be perfect, and they're the right size. And then one friend gave me this little basket. It's made out of an acorn hat. I don't know what you call the top of an acorn, but I call it the little hat. And then the handle's been made out of a little pipe cleaner. And I actually put the plants in there myself to make them look like herbs, because you know witches are always have herbs around. So there's that. And then my other friend gave me this pot, and I filled this one full of herbs. And she also gave me this little chair. This used to sit out in a fairy garden outside my house, and it used to be a dark brown, but it's just faded through the years, so I'll probably repaint it. And it's the perfect size because I've already had He-Man sitting on here, and it's just the perfect scale. So I've still got to make 5 chairs, but since I've got this one, I'll just have to make 4 other chairs, and they're all going to have to be different anyway. So I like the look of this one, and since it's the size, I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And then this little broom, I really like it. It'll probably go next to the fireplace. And this little chamber pot, this will go under one of the beds. I think this is handmade. It's an actual pottery piece. And this little light bulb, which I'm going to paint to look like a bottle. And then these little wine bottles, I'm going to have to repaint these because they just look too much like wine bottles. But once I paint them, I think they'll look more appropriate for the witches. And then last is this little pack of wands. I think these are meant to be used in a fairy garden. And my friend that gave them to me, I've had them for a couple years now, and I didn't really want to put them outside, so I think it'll be cool. Even though it don't show the Sanderson sisters having wands, I'll probably still put one each in, you know, the 3 rooms, because I'm sure they probably did, even though they never showed it. So there's each one of them a wand, and later we can decide who we think gets whichever of those. And the next lot, the first thing I want to mention is this rat. Now this rat is way too big, but the reason I've got it is I cut the tip of his tail off, because there's that scene where Sarah walks in the house and she reaches up and she says, "Oh, my lucky rat's tail." So there's her little tiny rat tail. This is the part that I'm going to use. This will go somewhere in her bedroom, or maybe up above the door where she found it like she did in the movie. But I wanted to actually have that little rat tail somewhere in the house. So I've got to put this in a bag, because I'll probably lose this by the time I actually get as far as decorating the house. So I need to put that someplace where I won't lose it. And then this is I've got a lot of vintage Halloween stuff, and this is just one of those little cupcake picks, and I just broke the bottom off. This will be perfect for Danny, because she carried a little pumpkin trick-or-treat bucket. And this was something off of a birdhouse, and I just thought it would look cool sitting in there. Maybe like a little table to sit this crystal ball on, or just to sit this little picture on, or just use it for something. And this lot is just things that I've had in my house. So this looks like a picture that would be good for one of the bedrooms, like on a dry sink. This is from my niece's Monster High play set. So this is going to be painted a little bit more realistic, and it's going to hang inside the fireplace, because I noticed there's a little cauldron hanging in the fireplace. And the little crystal ball is just something I found, because like I said, I've got a lot of Halloween stuff. And then I've got this cat, which I think looks really cool. It's the right scale, and I'm trying to decide if I want to use him for Binks. If I do, I'm going to have to pop out these little eyeballs and give him a more realistic looking eye. But I don't know if I want to use it for him or if I want to make something a little more detailed, so you'll have to let me know if you think that looks like a Binks or if I should just make one. And of course this basket, it's kind of big, but I think it'll be fine for the scale that I'm going for, because we have a lot of baskets in our house and we have some really large baskets, so it's really not out of scale, I don't think. And then of course Sarah, she likes to eat spiders, and this is the only smallest spider I could find. This may look more like a tarantula in this scale, but it's still, I don't think it's too big to use. We can just say it's a tarantula. So that'll probably sit somewhere in her bedroom. I'm going to have a lot of little Easter eggs in their rooms for each character. And whatever this little thing is, I had this, it's like a little metal container thing. I just thought it looked old. This piece of wood, I've got a bunch of these, and I'm going to make this the tabletop to the table that I'll make later. And this little crock, this is a handmade little pottery piece. It's got some apples inside. And this tiny little doily, this can go on one of their tables. And I've actually got something perfect. I've got this tiny little picture frame, and I'm going to paint an actual watercolor of the three sisters and put inside of this later on to go in one of their bedrooms. So that'll be perfect sitting on top of here in one of the rooms, maybe on a little table. And this little sack, it could be just something left for the meal, maybe some grain or something. And then this is something my friend gave me, actually. He gave me this, and he said I should redress it to look a little more like something for the time period. But she's got this long blonde hair, and I think this is going to be for Sarah. I'm going to sit this in her room on her bed, like one of her little childhood dolls, since it's, you know, it kind of looks like her with the blonde hair. And Sarah's the youngest, so she'd probably most likely be the one to still have a toy laying around. And, oh, of course, a skull. I noticed there's a couple skulls in the house. This is just a little plastic one, I think, from the Dollar Tree. And these are little putka pods. This is an actual pod off of a plant, but I thought they looked like pumpkins, so we'll sit those around to be like little pumpkins. I've got a bunch of these. And some little milk bottles, which this may be a little too modern for the time period, but I'm just going to paint these up to be a little bit different and use them for potion bottles. And here's a little can of evaporated milk, which that's a little too modern also, but I'm still going to use it just because I like it. And the last thing in this lot is this little brooch. This used to have a tiny little cameo and two little jewels on the sides, but I'm going to try later in a video paint 3 tiny little watercolors of the Sanderson sisters, and this will just be like a little picture frame next to their bed or something. I just thought that'd be really cool to try to do that, so that's something I'll work on later in one of the videos. Now this last lot may look familiar to you already, because these are all the things that I've made in the videos. These are the little props that I've made. I don't really need to talk about them since we've watched the videos of each of these. But here's the little book that I did. And the only thing I haven't shown is these little herbs. These are just little snips off of some of the plants that we've got through the house, like artificial plants. And I've just bundled these up and tied little tiny ropes around it, and these will just hang all over inside the house, because if you are watching the movie, you'll notice a lot of little herbs hanging around. And again, you know, herbs are a big deal in the witch community, so we got to have lots of herbs hanging around. So I've got like 20 different ones, because it needs to be really full of these hanging around in the house. Alright, so this is the very top level of the house, and I think everything in here is done except for painting the floor. This is going to be Sarah's bedroom, and I've got, like I said earlier, a couple little hidden Easter eggs. Well, they're not really hidden, but they're just little Easter egg things that people will maybe not get, but I've got it over here, like she has carved her and Billy Butcherson's initials in the wall, S+B. And then up here I've got these little hooks, because there's that scene where she says, let's hang him on a hook and let me play with him. So we've got these little chains and these little hooks up here on the wall. And then of course her bed will sit here, and we'll get to decorate this later on when we get more of the little props done and after the floor is painted. So just wanted to show the little details that I'd put up here. Alright, so the last thing I want to show is I got this little chandelier painted, and since this one doesn't light up, I just went through here before that paint dried. I stuck some little tiny wicks down in there to look like the little candle wick. That is just a little piece of black thread, and of course again this is Mod Podge and paint that I dripped over this to paint these candles. Because if you just use straight up paint, sometimes when you just glob paint this way, it will crack. And I've noticed mixing that Mod Podge in there keeps it from cracking. And I like the glossy paint because, you know, candle wax is glossy, and I like it having that little glossy texture to it. And I just about forgot, of course, I think you saw this rug already. But the back of it sort of snags a little bit. It's got these little pieces that will snag easily, and I don't really want that to pull or anything, so I'm going to glue a back to this just so nothing catches on these little pieces. Probably just like something really thin, maybe even like a dryer sheet, just anything that's really thin that I could just glue to the back of that, and that'll keep any of this from picking and pulling. So I'll probably work on that later. And of course I am going to age the edges of this just to make it look a little more worn. And then these are two doilies that came from my mama's collection. She collects doilies. So I'm going to use these. They're hard to see against that background, but these I'm going to use like little bedspreads for two of the beds. Just fold them up and have them laying at the foot of the bed. And then this is a bigger doily. It's got a lot of stains on it, but I'm okay with that. I don't mind it being dirty. I'm going to cut this one up and use it for making the mattresses for the 3 beds, and probably the curtains. The beds have curtains around them, and hopefully this will be enough to do curtains and mattresses for the beds. And actually these little stain spots will probably be the parts that I cut the square to make the little bed mattress, because I just thought those little stains would make a good detail for a little mattress. I know that's kind of gross, but you know, some mattresses do have stains, and being 3 wicked witches, they may not be the cleanest people anyway, so that would just, you know, be a good spot to cut out of this for the mattress, and then maybe these other halves can be for the curtains along the edges of the bed. So that's how I'll probably do this. And then I've got this little this is a collar to an old shirt from like the 1900s. This is another thing that came from one of the sales. I'll probably cut this up and use this for the little pillows on the beds, because I thought that would match this well. And I just like it that it's old fabric. And it's not really useful for anything else. It's got a lot of holes in it anyway. So it would just be really cool to use something that's actually older as part of the house. Alright, and the last thing I have to show is not necessarily something that needs to go in the house, because you don't really have giant buttons and giant spoons in a dollhouse, but this is a souvenir button from Salem, Massachusetts, from the Salem Witch Museum, and I just thought that was pretty cool. I'd got this at I think one of our estate sales. And then this is just a little spoon. It says the House of Seven Gables, Salem, Massachusetts. And it's got this cool little witch flying on a broom, and I just really like those. And I may even just stick them back in that little closet under the stairs, because I don't really display them anywhere else. So I may just tuck them in there so the actual house will have something that's actually from Salem. Alright, so I decided to actually show this a little bit in a video, just because I liked how it was going, and I thought, well, they may want to actually watch this. But here, I don't know if it really stands out as much. I've kind of aged this end, and these little fringe on the end is just perfectly combed out and white. And out here, I've just took water and I've just completely wetted this with water, and then I've just kind of poked at it with this brush to kind of separate that combed out fringe, so it's not so perfectly combed out. And then I just get a little bit of gray paint on my brush, and you could do this with whatever color you think it should be aged with, but I just thought the gray looked kind of good, because I looked at, you know, some of the real rugs, and they just look sort of like a grayish color when they're dirty and aged a little bit. So I just like how that looks here. It looks more like a little worn, frayed, not so perfect as like this side here. As you can see, that's almost like a straight, perfect white line. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this side, just soaking it with the water, making sure it gets really wet, and then I'll get the gray paint and then just put that gray, and the lights kind of got it washed out. It looks a lot more gray in real life than it does from what I can tell on the camera, but that's all I'm going to do, is just that little bit. And then I'm just going to go in here and peck at it with the tip of this brush, and you can sort of see how that's separating that and making that look more worn. So I think that looks way better than just being perfectly groomed. Oh, and also I did go on the back and I did glue on a dryer sheet, and that's just give me a much smoother surface to where the floorboards and other things won't be picking at that backing, that original back that was on here. So that's just made that so much nicer on the back, and it didn't really, it was just so thin. I mean, you all know what dryer sheets are like. They're super thin, and it was just the perfect thing for the back of this little rug. And the very last thing, I want just a few little spots here and there. So I'm just going to wet this with a little bit of water, and I'm going to take some of my coffee and just sprinkle that there, and that will make a spot. Because with this being in the house that I'm doing, I feel like it needs to be dirty, so I don't mind it staining this. So I'm just going to do that, and then maybe even go over with a little bit more water, just to make sure that coffee gets wet. And just let that sit there, and that'll make just a little spot, because I don't want this looking too clean. Since I dirtied the edges, I thought I should just put a few spots on it here and there, so the longer that sits, the darker that little spot will get.